Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to the second episode of Web Summit series, The Revenue Manager. I'm very pleased to welcome my colleagues, Harry, Federica, Diego, Christopher, and Scott Dahl. Today we have a second episode, guys, so it's going to be another big challenge because the theme of the day is, dear revenue managers, how are you going to be competitive in 2022? So this is a big question. Scott is going to drive during the conversation with our guest star, and we will introduce them in a little bit. But let me say hi, everyone. Good afternoon, my colleagues. Harry, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, Enzo. Hi, Scott. Good to see you.
Hi,
Christoph,
Henry.
Diego, Federica.
Henry.
Ciao
Hey,
everybody.
yeah.
Hello.
Cool, cool.
So we have a great panel here today, I think, with some great perspectives from different groups. Um, you know, being competitive means different things, I think, for many hoteliers, depending on when they are, where they are, and which segment they operate. So we've got some really good speakers here. So I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing. Right. So that let me ask this straightforward question to my colleagues. Diego, what
I,
is your way to be competitive this year?
it's a good question because after these 2 years of pandemic issues, this is going to be key in our markets if you are able to be competitive in terms of pricing or in terms of products. So, from my point of view, the only way to be competitive after this pandemic is having a great technological platforms. Again, all surrounded the technological solution must be, always top of the line. So I think that this is going to be the first key issue after this pandemic in order to be really, really in the market.
Cool. Thanks. And we know that you have a great experience managing an amazing group of 60 properties, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah,
right, Diego?
almost 50.
That's great. Christopher, what about over Canada, Ontario? No, Toronto.
Well, yeah, I think that Diego made a really good point. Technology is what will separate a lot of hotels. Of course, we need to implement the right strategy, but how can we come up with the right strategy if we don't have the tech stack in place that allows us to do that? And we need to keep in mind, the hotel across the street will upgrade their tech stack. We have to follow, and we better don't follow, we better are first. So my tip for everyone is make sure to watch all the episodes of the Revenue Manager Summit Series, because that's where you will hear what you need to know to do and what you need to know to be competitive this year.
Amazing. Federica, what's your point? Quick one.
Hello everybody. I have to say that it's very funny and interesting that we never speak with Chris and Diego, but we always are on the same line. So I think the same. I think that empowering our tech stack is very important and can give hoteliers the way to break through. So we have to work on the strategy, but we also need to have the right technology in order to execute the strategy. So I think this is really, really important. And along with that, of course, also having a focus on total revenue management, so an approach which is not only about the rooms, but also on all the departments who can give revenue. This is also very important.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Right, Scott, what do you think? Shall we look quickly the clip and see who are the speakers?
Absolutely. I thought you were going to ask me, Enzo, and my answer was going to say surround yourself with smart people.
Right.
So let's bring some more out. So yeah, let's do that.
You're right. You're right. You will have this conversation going on in a bit.
For sure.
All right. Opening the webcam to all our guests. Let me check if I got everyone. Yes.
That's
Right.
everybody. There we go.
Cool. So this is your turn, Scott. I leave this big group in your hands. Take care of them, please, and get fun. Thank you. See you later.
I'll do my best. Thanks, Enzo. Today's topic I'm super excited about. It's obviously really, really relevant for us. What can revenue managers do to be successful and be competitive in 2022? And we have an amazing panel. So let me go ahead and once again stop yapping and let's bring them out. So first, let me introduce Dr. Ian DiTullio, the Chief Commercial Officer for Southern Europe at Accor. So Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Accor.
Hi, Scott. Well, thank you for bringing us all in on the music of Stranger Things. It's oddly appropriate for this session. So I essentially have been at Accor for 4 years, and I'm head of what we call commercial. What that means in simple terms is I'm responsible for demand generation, anything from revenue management, pricing, digital, operational brand management, loyalty, sales, and food and beverage is what I do day to day. And at nights, I'm also co-CEO of our luxury private rental division, One Fine Stay. So, keeps me busy.
We were talking about that before we started the show. You're one of those people now. You have to figure out which business card you hand people based on the conversation that you're involved in at the time. Thierry, I want to go to you next. First of all, Ian, thanks for being back with us again another season. And Thierry, same for you. You spent some time with us last year on the show. But for those that don't know, Thierry is commercial director for EMEA of OTA Insights. OTA Insights, I'm sure everybody knows who that is if you're following this topic. So Thierry, tell us a little bit about you and your role at OTA Insights.
Yes, hello everyone, and great to be back on the show. Yes, my name is Thierry Collard. I've been with OTA Insights for the last 5.5 years. Spent time across Europe and also across the US. And since last October, I moved back to Amsterdam, where I'm from. So also right now calling in from Amsterdam. And I look after the business development team for the EMEA growth markets for OTA Insights. So a team of 15 talented business development managers looking after Southern, Eastern Europe, and also Middle East and Africa. Quick introduction with OTA Insights. We are a data and BI provider to the hospitality industry. We provide a suite of solutions to empower hotels to make smarter revenue distribution and marketing decisions. And today we support over 60,000 hotels globally. So that's a quick introduction, and yeah, really excited for this panel today.
Absolutely, looking forward to getting into some of the details about BI specifically and where that's all going, because it's pretty exciting. And so next, new guest for us, but a good friend of mine. So let me introduce Stephen Hauber. Stephen is Corporate Director of Revenue Management at Wurzak Hospitality. So Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about Wurzak.
Absolutely. Good morning. It's morning here in the States, so I know we have a worldwide audience, so good afternoon, good evening as well. Stephen Hauber, Corporate Director of Revenue with Wurzak. We are a management company that has now really identified revenue management as the key to the future successes of our hotels and the new hotels that we're bringing on. So I am thrilled to be part of this panel. It's a very relevant topic. And I think that we have an opportunity today as we sit here with all the disruption that has gone on over the course of the last couple of years and all the things that have changed in our industry to really lead what the next steps are and really take advantage of some of the lack of foresight because we have new tools, new technologies, new data that's available to us, and really we sit in a prime position to be able to walk forward and to lead where these hotels are going to go and what the industry is going to do as we move forward. So very much happy to be here and can't wait to hear what everybody has to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's great to have you here, Steve. Looking forward to your perspective based on, really, really actively running hotels on a daily, moment-to-moment basis, and also being located in a different market than the majority of us. So welcome. And finally, no stranger probably to folks that follow this space. Definitely one of the thought leaders in our space. But let me introduce, for those of you that don't know him, Remy Merrick. And Remy is head of travel and hospitality at eClerx Digital. So Remy, tell us about yourself and tell us a little bit about eClerx and what that's all.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. So I joined eClerx a couple of months ago. Actually, eClerx is a business management advisory company helping all type of industries to to optimize their business, to work with digital transformation, to set up the right technology. So it's really a great moment also to share within this revenue management, let's say, conversation, what those type of companies are doing on that side. I'm trying to set up also this travel and hospitality vertical, which was not existing for eClerx. So they are really now entering into this industry through analytics, data management, but also innovations. And I'm sure we will say a word around that, because revenue management is the perfect topic also to speak about innovation regarding blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, and how this can help the future of revenue management moving forward. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Remy. Thanks, and glad that you're here. So we're going to talk about how to be successful in 2022, but I think it's really kind of important to spend a little bit of time before we do that and really just set the stage a little bit. So, Ian, I'm going to ask you first, actually, because you really have a great visibility to a whole portfolio of hotels. Understanding you can't be super detailed right now because you're in the middle of your quiet time for Accor and the public reporting, but kind of, assuming the worst is over, how's the recovery going so far, would you say?
Well, it's I can probably say that we're seeing ever increasing resilience. Just when you think you can't get hit by something, you're seeing a bounce back, which is consistently stronger, and you see a certain consistency in performance now across segments, which we didn't see in the last couple of years. Now, of course, some segments remain quite jittery. So I can certainly say with confidence that everything which is related to uncontracted or transient leisure or uncontracted business is actually quite strong and picking up quite well. While we're still seeing the corporate sector, anything which is contracted, being still quite affected by a number of factors, which we're all quite aware of, whether it's the new usages around video conferencing. Some of the postponements of events have continued. The COVID, the context in Omicron early in the year has probably impacted the 2-3 first months. And of course, inflation and geopolitics really don't help reintroduce confidence in that specific segment. But generally speaking, we're now starting to see the return of some of the major events. The postponements are now slowing down, and you're really starting to see the business really solidifying across all segments. And we're fairly confident that the year will be quite good. Now we still have these challenges. We still have shorter than expected or shorter than historical booking windows. We still have preferences for these multi-purpose lifestyle leisure type hotels. We're now seeing that circle start to expand back again into all the other segments of hospitality that we've traditionally operated. So overall, quite happy. But still we're seeing a mix of customers changing quite dramatically between still favoring domestic and call it regional type of consumers, and still kind of missing out on some subsegments of those long haul travelers.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, if I could characterize that as kind of guardedly optimistic, I think, and I think that's a position a lot of us share. Stephen, I'm going to ask you to chime in too. You have a portfolio of hotels east coast of the United States, including some hotels in Florida, which was one of the first markets really to recover and show some good signs of recovery as a result of good leisure business. But how's the recovery shaping up for you guys?
Yeah, it's encouraging and discouraging all at the same time to hear that no matter where we are in the globe, we're seeing the same pattern. But we did see a speedier recovery in Florida. Pretty much anything that touches the water or has sand has seen a pretty swift recovery. A lot of leisure travel, a lot of destination travel. Unfortunately, major markets in the United States are still struggling a bit. One of the big factors that we have is that government travel is still being restricted, which is a significant source of business for a lot of our major markets. Additionally, we have not seen a return to conventions and groups, which is really negatively impacting our lead time for that core business, that weekday business. We have seen a lot of domestic travel. We have seen a lot of sort of drive market for weekend business. We have started to see a return for weddings and social events and things like that. So it's a bit uneven still, but 2021 was better than 2020, 2022 is better than 2021, and so on and so forth. And so I do share that guarded optimism. I do think that as we continue to stretch a little bit and see that the dynamics change, as those markets start to come back, we will see a more even recovery. I'm very hopeful for Q4 of this year, and really looking at 2023 as a turning point for us to be able to not go back to normal, but feel better about how the industry is recovering. So,
okay, excellent. So, Remy, let me ask you. You talk to hoteliers all the time, right? How about you? What anecdotally, where do you feel like we are? I mean, this isn't our first cycle, right? So,
Yeah.
you and I might be the senior guys on the panel, and so we've seen recoveries before because we've seen downturns before. But where would you say we're at?
That's true. It reminds me, I was back at Expedia just right after 2001, and so we survived those type of recovery model. Actually, we see very similar patterns today in the industry in general. I can echo what Ian and the other panelists are saying. It's still, even if we are optimistic, the numbers are also speaking for themselves. We don't have to forget that most of the hospitality business has ended 2021 at about 50% from their business of 2019. And of course, the recovery has grown significantly in the first quarter 2022, but most of them are still between 15 and 20% below 2019. So definitely there is an optimistic capacity with some unknown factors that will impact specifically revenue management or demand generation, like Ian was mentioning about how to generate this demand. And that's all the geopolitical crisis in Ukraine, in Russia. We all aware of that. And that creates still some uncertainty. What we have seen also within our clients is a general trend, is this change of mindset in big corporations regarding corporate travel and regarding meetings and events organizations. And there, a lot of the hospitality companies have also managed to change their offering, to change their products in order to adapt to the new ways of doing that business. And of course, when you do that, it takes time to generate new demand for it. And it takes investment in terms of marketing, and takes investment also on technology. But there, we have seen several of the big guys moving into the right direction to start generating this new model, this new way of generating revenue for them. And that's very encouraging. So I think that's a little bit what we are seeing for our clients, but I guess in general in the industry.
Cool. And then kind of before we move on, Thierry, you guys, OTA Insights, you're a leader in market data. So I'm sure you guys sit around and talk about this all day long at lunch. Like, what are the early indicators? But what kind of insights can you give us from some of the stuff that you're able to see on a macro basis about the business?
Yeah, not too much to add, just maybe because we, of course, have the view from a global perspective, independent, local chains, global chains. And I think in general, everyone is very optimistic about this year. Even some chains we speak to, they expect record numbers for this summer. So I think overall very optimistic. Of course, for EMEA, as Ian already highlighted, there's some slight uncertainty with some of the market conditions. But in general, I think everyone's very excited about this year, very optimistic. So yeah, looking forward to see the results in the coming months.
Cool. Thanks, Jerry. So I think we can all agree we're at least in somewhat of recovery, right? So, which is pretty good news. And we mentioned it, I think Remy brought it up already. COVID's not the first external disruption that our industry's ever seen, right? But the one nice thing about them, Remy, and you mentioned it in terms of 2001 Expedia, typically the disruption is pretty abrupt, but the great sailing after the fact tends to last longer. And I think we're kind of looking at some of those kind of time periods. So you mentioned 2001 Expedia. Expedia was founded quite a bit earlier than that, and certainly Hotels.com, the predecessor and everything, but took that disruption to get hotels to pay attention. And then the credit crisis in 08 and 09, very similar, right? And all of a sudden, we all became aware of the cloud and big data, and everyone started to talk for the first time about optimizing their tech stack instead of just buying an enterprise solution, and that kind of stuff. So Thierry, I'm going to, you're directly in this space. I'm going to come back to you. What technologies from a distribution and BI and all this, tech stack stuff, what do you think are going to be the game changers that come out of this, this sort of innovation cycle, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of innovation happening in industry. And of course, COVID forces industry providers to accelerate development and adjust to the needs of hoteliers today, but also of tomorrow, which of course is positive for the hoteliers in the end. So actually, from our perspective, in the midst of the pandemic, we launched a new product, forward-looking, demand predictive product, a solution for hotels, for revenue managers, marketing managers, to allow them to spot the earliest signs of demand. So to understand who actually is looking to stay in your market, which origin, for which length of stay. So it really allows hotels to better forecast demand and really understand who's my kind of new customer going forward.
Yeah, I think that, let me shameless commercial for you. I think that's your market insights product that you're referring to. And I won't go through the whole story, but you guys are gracious enough to provide us your tools to use with my students. And some of the insights that my students can even find as a result of using them to drill into is really, really, really cool. So if you haven't seen that product, if you're out there kind of wondering about how to see into the future a little bit more and not just look in the past, that's a really great example of it. But you kind of as a follow-up to that, you guys recently also acquired, I want to make sure I get it right, Transparent, which is a source of future-looking data for the alternative stay industry, right? The Airbnb model, if you will, or that kind of a model. And so, but with all of this new data that continues to become available and continue to become available, like how do we sort through it all? Eventually, it just becomes static, right? You can't read all this granular data. So how does it become actionable?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think first of all, for obvious reasons, I think we are very interested to enter the short-term rental space since the industry is converging. And Transparent is a market-leading provider of data and business intelligence for the short-term rental space. A little bit similar as OT Insight is doing today for hotels, but then they are focused more on the short-term rental space. So they're typically working with DMOs, hotels, property management companies. And what they do is really they track listings from proprietary and public sources such as Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. So that's really the space where they are currently operating in. And if you look at that space, there's a lot of things happened in the past. Of course, Airbnb acquiring Hotel Tonight, having hotel inventory, but also, for example, the PMSs and channel managers covering more and more of the same channels. Also, if you look at hotel chains, some of the biggest brands investing in vacation rentals, such as Marriott with Homes and Villas. Also, of course, Ian as well on this panel with One Fine Stay. So yeah, a lot is happening in this space. I think very exciting. And in the end, of course, there's a lot of data out there, but it's important to make sure that you have access to actionable data and it's meaningful to your business.
Cool. Yeah, we'll get to Ian, the CEO of One Fine Stay, in that space in a moment. But Remy, I'm going to ask you because you brought it up. So we talked about those cycles, right? And you brought up OTAs right away in terms of that cycle 2 cycles ago. But what do you think is going to be, what are we going to remember 2022 for several years from now?
Well, I think there has been a major difference between today's crisis or this crisis and the past crisis is the advance in technology for suppliers. And we have seen most of the hotel groups and even independent organizations still during the crisis investing in technology significantly. They dropped everything related to marketing investment. They stopped their campaigns, which makes sense because when there is no demand, you don't spend money. But the smartest, they decided, I guess, with their executive committee, to continue all the investment in the technology. And that was the right thing to do. And that is what makes it different for the recovery today, is that I think the consumers, and actually from some public numbers that we have seen across the board, and STR sharing also those numbers, we can see also that those companies who have continued to invest in their technology, including in revenue management technology, they are now performing way better with their what we were used to call direct sales versus indirect sales, and finally their own digital platforms, if they have invested in the right technology, are picking up also shares that they have lost to third-party distributors. And some of you probably knows where I'm coming from with that. I hate to create this battle between third-party distribution and online people and direct business that hotels. But I think that's the job also of revenue management today, is to take into consideration the profitability of each channel that they are selling through. And they have seen also this capacity to drive more profitable business through their own channels. And I'm so happy to finally see that big hotel chains, but also smaller independent hotels, have made that investment to get the right technology. Are we still there? I know that one of the questions in the air is, are we quick enough to invest? Are we quick enough to build all these tools? It takes time, but it's great that finally they realize also the importance to own their own customers and their best ambassadors that will bring them a better business. So I think we are on a good track moving forward. So again, there on that side, I'm very positive for the future.
Yeah, thanks, Remy. I think you bring up a really, really good point, right? We went through COVID, and pretty much any business was good business, intermediated business, direct business, change that we find in the sofa in the lobby. Like, it was pretty much anything we were willing to deal with. And my hope is that when we come back to the point where we're looking at the cost of distribution more discerningly, because it's a place where we can earn incremental revenue, that we're much more pragmatic, like you mentioned. I don't think it's a binary decision, OTAs are bad, direct business is great. Because if you're spending 35% to get your direct business, it's probably more expensive than OTA business. So I think being much more pragmatic and potentially aided by our ability to track that and understand it better, I think, as well. But clearly I think there's a middle ground to be struck there, where we don't want to overpay for business, but at the same time, I think it doesn't make sense to overpay for it just because our ego says we don't like that source. That doesn't make sense either. So Ian, let me kind of go to you, right? And I'm going to have you bring us down a little bit. A frequent participant on our show, probably some of you guys know her, Kelly McGuire. She likes to point out the difference between a futurist and a tomorrowist. And so, Ian, I'm going to ask you, like, how much of this stuff is Star Wars, like not really in play when it comes to making money next month, and how much of this stuff is like real, and you guys are really, really, incorporating into what you're doing today?
Well, I'm glad Remy and Thierry went before me, because they just essentially just fed me a bunch of great content that I could just surf on. Realistically, a lot of what we're mentioning here is today. Now, to the degree to which it is today is a function of where you stand in the organization, right? Tech is used by people, right? So a lot of this technology, of course, these investments happen to some degree in a central manner. So a number of revenue management teams right now are essentially working on enhanced version of revenue management systems, integrating new subsets of data. As you kind of work your way down the operational chain, you now end up with a number of revenue managers in hotels, whether they're franchise or management is unimportant, which also need to be brought up in terms of skill set. So there's a combination of functionality and maturity to actually utilize that functionality. But what we're talking about is not Star Wars at all. I mean, the concepts of net ADR, net RevPAR, piloting, against the total profitability of your hotel, and allocating to channels and essentially managing your inventory based on peaks is really the job that's expected of revenue managers today. So it's just critical for that upskilling to happen very rapidly, for people to get upskilled on new sources of data, how they impact, how they get integrated into systems. Even if their maturity from a pure system deployment perspective isn't there, they need to be intellectually ready for the moment where all of these tools come to bear. So so I really believe that the mindset needs to be tremendously accelerated to be there in that space today, so that it can accommodate a lot of these tools as they essentially mature and evolve very rapidly, should I mention, in the coming years.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. And just before we wrap up with this topic, Stephen, I just want to kind of throw it to you, right? You're in a very hands-on role. So how does it, where's the stuff that's relevant and where's the stuff that's not? How do you draw the line?
Yeah, absolutely. And analysis paralysis, right? There's so much data that sits out there, and there's so many things that, flying at a revenue manager at any given point. Where do you spend your time? Is a great question, and one that everybody needs to sit and contemplate. I think the profitability part is really taking hold, and I'm happy for that. We're moving away from just retail rates and ADR driven strategies, because that's what owners thought that they wanted, and really looking at channel mix and the profitability of a specific piece of business. What is the value of a customer, and all of that, and finding that data and mining that data is what brings that strategy to light, and really understanding where the customer is coming from, where our guests, the whole of the wallet, right, and understanding where those pieces go will determine what our future strategies look like, and so being in the moment, being right now, taking all of that technology and all that data, but really pouring into our revenue managers to develop the skills that they need to be able to handle that inflow, and make that a strategic decision, and put something to it, is where our focus is right now. Making sure that our people have what they need, so that as they get bombarded with wave after wave of micro data, that they can turn that into something that is strategic and forward looking, to be able to put new guests into buildings that otherwise have sat empty for a while now.
Thanks, Tim. You mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and use that right to jump into the next one. You mentioned our people. So, and I think it's probably no surprise to anyone that's in the hotel business. COVID brought on I'm going to call it the great reassessment, not the great resignation, but we're struggling with staffing. And so, Ian, let me ask you, I mean, is that impacting your ability to attract and keep the right folks in roles, or are you finding it specific in the commercial disciplines, or is it, more kind of the I guess the job part of our industry, not so much the long-term commercial career part?
That's an excellent question. Are we impacted? Yes, still. I mean, it's a struggle. It's a struggle every day, notably within, of course, not only across core hospitality, but across all of our food and beverage portfolios. Of course, there's a capacity of people to move around assets and hotels. So there's, of course, a gravitation towards hotels which have more purpose and give people more of a sense of engagement. And so what you're seeing is a movement of some of that skill set towards hotels that resonate with them more. We're also seeing a struggle because historically, of course, hospitality was a career, right? You could come in at any level within a hotel and really make your way. It was a social elevator. And to some degree, in the last, I would say, decades, we've lost a perspective of that social elevator. So to me, one of the key, there's 2 points here. We need to re-demonstrate to people how hospitality is a social elevator. It's a sector where people can grow, develop in a variety of different skills, and essentially probably utilize their passion for people and their passion for the sector of travel and put it to the best use possible. Now, that also implies that we need to completely rethink how that elevator functions. And that means relooking schedules, right? I mean, if anyone that's worked in a kitchen knows that it's a bit of a nightmare working in a hotel kitchen. You show up in the morning, there's a dead period where you probably, in some cases would sleep on a couch for a couple of hours before re-engaging on the next service. And so we're really looking at revising shifts completely, breaking down the work week into 4-3, working with some of our hotel partners to really rethink how the elevator functions, and then really rethink the purpose of the industry. I mean, we're in the midst of massive changes around sustainability and a number of other things, and people are looking for the industry to evolve before they re-engage. So absolutely, we are struggling. Are we seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? We're starting to, but it's not going to be a short-term fix. There needs to be a fundamental change on how we operate before we get that attractiveness that we once had.
Thanks, Ian. Actually, I'm definitely going to revisit the development component, and I love that term that you use, social elevator. I think it's a really strong term, and I think anybody who's worked in the hotel business for a little while that's ever attended a holiday party at a hotel knows exactly what you're talking about, and it can make just an absolutely glorious you really can be a family environment at the same time that it's a big business. So I think that's you bring up a really great point. Thierry, I'm going to take advantage. Oh, go ahead, Remy, jump in.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing on Ian's point? He's totally right. What is also very interesting is that you can add in this elevator pitch that you are seeing, now you have also new jobs coming on board in the hospitality industry, and specifically in the digital side, the technical side, and the revenue management side. And that's also very interesting, because finally, in the hospitality, you go also and bring new competencies and new type of profiles into that industry, and that we were missing in the past also a lot. Like Ian said, you were, and I'm a perfect example of that. You know, I started as a receptionist at the Sheraton in Brussels. That was my first job in the career, and then you build up your career within the hospitality. And I ended up by being managing the digital transformation for Radisson but now we have this opportunity to bring from scratch this competency from outside, and that helps us also to develop this industry with way better profiles and get into the teams more knowledgeable in technology, in revenue management, in digital profiles within the hospitality organizations. And I think that's also very interesting.
And Remy, I would say, honestly, we need more operational people in all of our head offices. I mean, we've specialized through the years, and it's wonderful to have specialists. Honestly, it's great. The problem with specialists is they've never done the operation. And so you end up with like 5-legged donkeys when what you need is a tricycle. So realistically, I welcome that opportunity. We have 2,200 jobs. Anybody that wants to apply? That's only in Southern Europe. So anytime, I'm here, 7-year CVs, but joking aside, Remy is right on point.
It's funny, Ian. I tell my students all the time, you're not going to have any credibility in a hotel until you smell like a hotel. And I think that's simply another way of describing that I wouldn't build a 5-legged donkey. So that was a really that was a really great way to bring it up. Thierry, let me come to you now as sort of probably the closest to the tech space. When we talk about this shortage of people, the hotel business has traditionally been really overridden by turnover in some cases. It's almost like paper towels. We would just continue to pull new ones off the roll. But now all of a sudden we're figuring out there's not very many left. And so owners are starting to invest in employee retention, employee satisfaction a little bit more than I've been used to in the past. And we're starting to talk about that some more. But what are some of the technology solutions that you see coming along that are also going to help us with some of this, with automating some of these positions that we've been really kind of slow to automate historically?
Yeah, maybe the perspective a little bit from the on the providers, the software side. So I think, first of all, even though there's a staffing crisis, technology can offer the flexibility to meet people anywhere, anytime, and can be faster than meeting in person. If I look currently at my team, we have 4 open positions, and actually 3 of them are remote positions. Then secondly, it's a great selling point for organizations as well who are willing to promote remote work. Because once on board and with the right tools and trust from the employer, team members can be offered the flexibility to work occasionally from wherever they want. Myself, when COVID hit in 2020 or 2021, I lived a digital nomad life for 1.5 years, traveling across Europe and working from anywhere. So, I mean, that's also great selling points for an organization. Then third, I would say there are a lot of great tools and companies out there to put your employer brand in the spotlight, and it's generally a lot easier to push content linked to your company virtually and through technology to potential candidates. As long as you do it in a creative way, then I think you can leverage an opportunity. And maybe lastly, to add as well, is technology, of course, reduces the amount of manual labor, spending time in spreadsheets, calculations, reports. I think we're all familiar with these. And enabling short-staffed teams to analyze and report with far greater ease. So, yeah, a couple of things there from more of a technology side of things.
Excellent. Thanks, Thierry. So, Remy, before we move on from this topic, the industry gets a bad rap for being slow to change, right? If we've done some stuff in the commercial recently, but for the most part, if you walk around a hotel, like a microwave oven is one of the more innovative pieces of equipment that we've got in the building. It was invented in 1960 something. So is this stuff going to stick? Or do you think business levels come back to a certain point and we fall back into the old mold?
No, I don't think we will fall back completely to the past. In some cases or for some topics probably, but what I mentioned before is really the reality now. Is that most of our industry have realized now how technology can enable now their operations, their profitability, their people. So there is a lot of this that can change moving forward in that industry. So it's taking time in that industry because you still have, the hotel business is a hospitality is an amazing business, but it's a people business. You still have to welcome people, you still have to feed people, you still have to put people under a shower, in a breakfast room, heads on bed. Heads on bed. That's what we were saying 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but it's still the reality, and that's the core business now. What you need to be able to bring to those people that does an amazing job in delivering that service, which brings back the loyalty, etc., in the hospitality, is this technology enabling, helping them to do a better business more efficiently. Profitability also needs to be taken into consideration. That takes always a little bit of time. But if we continue to have the industry to now understand where they have to put their dollars or euros in investing to enable the operations, people in a hotel will remain. I'm not a believer of a full online check-in process. That will not happen. Even in 20 years' time, some people will use it, some people will love it, but you always will have a receptionist behind a desk in a hotel, or on a sofa, or whatever the experience you can have in a lifestyle brand. But all technology investment will help, one, to make that process more efficient, two, to own the data of the customer, to know better your customer and address those customers in a better way, and make those customers coming back, which has an answer to your loyalty program. It's not the topic of today. I hope we will have another discussion on loyalty, because that's a big topic in itself. But that's how I see. So it's still slow. It's getting better, and I think we have positive days in front of us.
Cool. Yeah, I think it was actually Mike Levin that I heard say the first time, the tech enabled innkeeper. And he was making the point of don't get away from the concept of being an innkeeper, right? We still take care of strangers when they're out of town, and we've been doing that for thousands of years. And just because we got cool tools to do it with now doesn't mean don't forget the basic premise that underlies the whole thing. But Remy, you opened up a cool can of worms, and so I'm going to go there. I can't resist, right? Every once in a while we hear this thing, is the revenue manager ever going to be completely replaced by technology? So I'm going to ask you first, right? And so first of all, Remy, my dad worked for Kodak for 30 years. For those of you that are young enough, you've never heard of Kodak before. They are the business school case study for not recognizing that technology is going to replace you if you don't evolve. But what do you think, Remy? Do you think we ever get to the point where revenue managers are the next blacksmiths or film developers? Do you think they ever get completely replaced by the machine?
I kind of answered in the previous topic. My answer is no. It will never happen. Look at what happened during the crisis. I mean, all revenue management systems were stuck after the crisis, because most of their data are based to past performance. And during the 2 last years, the systems went crazy because no business, no demand, So how do you want to forecast the next 2 years with no data in the last 2 years? So that's where I think human being and very strong technological driven people will bring their knowledge in order to build that. And I'm sure revenue managers around the world are in that spirit. Now, what I'm also saying is that revenue management needs also to move to the next level, where it's not only the RevPAR or even the total RevPAR that is important, but to me, it's the customer lifetime value that is important. Is how much one single customer has a total value for your business. And if you find a way to optimize that or to increase that, that is what revenue managers should do. And also taking into consideration now that digital is providing so much data, all digital marketing demand generation data, because that was not included in the past in the revenue management systems. they were only based on transactional data that past customers were having in the systems. Now, Google and all these tools and Facebook, we can tell huge stories around that, but they can still provide you with very interesting third-party and data that will complement your first-party data that will help to do predictive forecasting in your revenue management. That's where I think revenue manager people will still exist. I love it.
And Thierry, let me ask you next. You're in the technology space, right? So what are your thoughts? I'll tell you how I feel personally. I love the idea of a driverless car. I'm a long way away from going in the back seat and taking a nap. But Thierry, let me ask you. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that we eventually can get there? Do you think the technology exists, and do you think the ability to be confident in it and still sort of treat it like a black box? I mean, we don't question what a toaster is doing. We get toast and we're happy. But I think that in this particular case, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in general, I agree with Remy. I think the trend is indeed to go, well, I think that the trend is more for hotels to go more into automation, and it won't be fully automated anytime soon, I think, because hotels still require a commercial leader to define a strategy and adjust based on market conditions, market demand, shifting demand. So I think, again, the trend is there to go more into automation, but in the end, we require people to make decisions as well. I think what's important, if you're going in a trend to more automation, then just make sure that the systems that you're using, that they get great input, great data input, accurate data, live data, to make sure the output is also optimized and accurate.
Thanks, Thierry. And so, Ian, I'm going to shift a little bit to you, and let's talk about people again. And specifically, I mean, you mentioned that you guys are hiring. I think you said 2,000 open positions. Wow. I know from the perspective of my students, I have one of my favorite students this semester has already accepted a position with you guys. You're very active on our campus right now. So, I mean, that's a lot of hiring that's going on, and obviously there was a little bit of a constriction. But how do you think the organization will look different when it's fully staffed compared to 2019? What changes?
Well, I think fully staffed means something else. I mean, I think we can all agree that. I mean, in every crisis. I mean, I was in the airline industry for a long time. Went through a number of strikes. I mean, American Airlines learned this the hard way. You go through a number of these crises, and you learn. You know, it kind of forces you to relook at your business. How do you operate? What are the fundamentals? What are the nice to haves? What are the square meters that are not productive that you're deploying resources against? You kind of go down to the real fundamental things that make your business run correctly. So I really believe that will be a relatively lighter industry. That said, I think we'll be a smarter industry. I think we'll be deploying resources where they're really required. I think there's a perspective on career pathing, which is changing. You know, retaining your staff is going to require you to be to be very active in ensuring that you ensure that the staff progresses through a clear understanding of what they want to do, how they want to evolve. And it kind of touches back on the very Remy conversation, right? I mean, if you evolve into revenue management, eventually you're going to end up into customer management, right? As you automate the data, right? The data around pricing and the rest of that stuff can, to some degree, be automated for sure. But the customer experience, the way you actually modulate some of these offers, how you actually adjust the experience, how you cross-sell your spas and your F&B, you've got excess inventory you need to push through. There's still so much complexity and unconnected cords and wires in our business that for the next 10 years, you're going to see an evolution towards customer management, but they're going to be very, very busy utilizing that data to cross-activate it. But those who manage a career paths of their new employees best will be the winners in this. Those who actually still see them as a commodity will see churn, a decrease in customer experience, decrease in customer loyalty, and really a loss of overall business.
Actually, I think that's a great point. I mean, like I mentioned with the turnover, if we keep treating our employees like paper towels, eventually all you have left is a trumpet, and you have to move on, right? There's no employees left on the roll. I mean, I really like the way that you brought that up, Ian, and especially you mentioned the customer management side of it. The last panel we had was all about who's going to prevail in the in the marketing or sales or revenue thing. And I think we came to the conclusion that currently a lot of revenue managers are arriving in that role because the analytics thing has been really, really important. But I completely agree with you. I think those analytics are going to be the price of entry for everyone that's pursuing a career in all those functions. And the ability to really understand and talk to the customer again is going to become very important. Not like it was 20 years ago at a cocktail party. Right now it's going to be in a digital fashion. But it really doesn't mean anything differently. I think other than that, it's just a different language that we speak to them with. But being able to speak to them is it's going to evolve as the difference maker. I think as opposed to the analytical thing right now. We're looking for people that can analyze and people that can understand data. But pretty soon that's going to be everybody. And so then the question is going to be, what's the next differentiator? And I agree with you. It's going to be able to talk to the customer and the customer be able to hear you.
Scott, most of the revenue managers today, they still don't have access to Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics that is managed by digital marketing. And they have no clue on what's happening on the demand generation there. That's where the problem is, If that demand generation data was able to feed into the revenue management systems in order to do predictive forecasting, I think the results of RMSs will be way better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and thumbs up from Ian. That was the live version of an emoticon, and so this is a perfect opportunity for me to ask you, Stephen, because I knew that at some point I was going to put you on the spot. I mean, you recently joined Wurzak Hotel Group, and one of the main reasons is because you're in the process of, in some cases, bringing in-house revenue management that up until recently was with the brand. And I'm quite certain that Mary knows how to manage revenue. So this is not because you're firing someone that's not competent. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about what's up with that. Why was that going on?
Sure. And it goes back to a lot of what the panelists have said previous, and I think to Remy's point, we're never going to go backwards on the tech side, right? And we're never going to go backwards on the data that we now have available for us. Well, that's not true. Bad managers and bad owners will go back, right? Because they'll try to jettison some things to cost and other things. And so what we see a need for within the company is to be able to continue to grow that. And the reason that we would look to bring it in-house is because we realize that there's not a cookie cutter way to be able to do things. And box by box, market by market, we need dynamic thinkers and dynamic people to be able to take the data and do more than just open the textbook to page 38 and this is what I'm supposed to do now. And within that space, there are creative people and there are people that will use that data that they have to really set up a strategy for not just the immediate booking window, not just the next 365, but really to set a course for their portfolio to be able to continue with growth that is replicable. And so if you constantly have ups and downs and spikes within your booking pattern, then your operation gets all messed up and you kind of just you give everybody kind of a panic attack every once in a while. If we can continue to grow things in a sustainable manner and really lay out a strategy so that everybody can understand it and vocalize that, then the building moves in a different way. And when everybody's on board, the revenue manager is the person that really can bring that strategy together and organize the building and organize the portfolio so that everyone is moving in lockstep with each other. And one of the things that I look for when I'm hiring is I don't just want somebody that's analytical. I need somebody that can sit in a boardroom and display a certain level of competency in the strategy that they put forth is the right thing for the hotel to do, so that there's buy-in from operations, from sales, from marketing, from catering, from everyone, so that they feel comfortable with what's happening in the building and why things are moving in the direction that they are. And so it's great to have somebody that can sort through data and sift through things and work through Tableau and put all these great reports together. But if they can't get the idea from their head out into the world, then you start to lose credibility. And so that's really what we're looking for. And yes, the brands can do revenue management, so to speak. But the next level of revenue management that we're sitting here and we're talking about is not going to come from the brand. It's going to come from independent thinkers. It's going to come from people that are willing to push boundaries. It's going to come from people that aren't accepting of the status quo as being the right way to do things. And the more that we can push on that, when we look back at what revenue management was 20 years ago to what it is today, it's not even the same discipline. And so to think about what we're going to be 20 years from now, when we look back at what 2022 was, I'm excited because we're finally at a point now where people look around and they go, oh, this revenue management thing, it's got legs. And it's not something that we're just going to put somebody in a dark corner and let them play with Excel. This is the next step in customer evolution. And how do we get to, wholly understanding how we can move people within the industry to set up a brand or a hotel or a portfolio to really own their customer share and drive it through the data analytics that we have, but to really set things up as we move forward in a way that we've never done before. And so that's really what I'm excited about. And that's why we want to do things on an in-house level, because we want those people to really push and grow and develop themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you, when you look at that portfolio and you look at the size of hotels that they are, I think that if you allow silos like that to exist, it becomes pretty hard to break them down, right? Because you've got certain people that are living in roles that don't have that great communication, like we've been talking about pretty much the whole time, that are really important. So I guess my conclusion is that we're not going to be replaced anytime soon, so we can all breathe a deep sigh of relief. If you're watching the show, don't jump off to go search for a job just yet. But along those lines, let's talk a little bit about the career thing. So, and Ian, this is where I said I was going to come back to you. How does this influence the profile of the commercial leader you're looking for? And maybe more importantly, how do you develop that talent? How do you invest in them so that what you talked about takes place?
Well, you know what, at the end of the day, I remember years ago, this was when I was young and, handsome. There was a whole conversation around, do you hire for the raw skill and you develop it, or do you actually, hire somebody out of school with a full specialization, master's degree, and you go to town? Increasingly, you're seeing that raw talent and your capacity to mold it into an incredibly, powerful skill set is increasingly what the industry, I believe, needs to do. So, at the end of the day, if that raw talent loves what they do, finds purpose in what they're achieving, I think that's the baseline. After that, really, it's a question of building the right leader based on the right skill sets. And there's some fundamental skill sets, whether it's in revenue management or I think in our industry in general, that everyone needs to have. So, and I'll use some really easy ones. The fundamentals of profit generation. Stephen was talking about, I think Remy as well. A lot of people don't understand how organizations make money. They work in their function and they do their thing, and they design an amazing customer experience online. And you actually kind of go through, go down the rabbit hole with them, and you realize this whole solution doesn't generate any incremental profit. It's just potentially a better customer experience, which may or may not convert into profit. So I think the fundamentals of how the business works needs to be a real baseline when somebody joins a company at any level, because it is from that point that people make the right choices. Then the second bit is key, is around understanding how data and some data capabilities affect that capacity to drive profit. So you kind of start building up bundles of skills which are fundamental to driving the business effectively. And then the next step is, of course, people understanding how all that translates operationally from a customer experience process perspective. Then you've got all the building blocks to direct somebody into a variety of different functions based on their preferences. We do it through an academy internally at Accor, and we support a bunch of employees in these kind of evolutions and the development of skill bundles and career paths. But fundamentally, it starts with loving what you do, finding a sense of purpose, and then building the right bundles of skills to assist you through your career.
Oh, I love the conclusion. I wish I'd written that down. That was fantastic. Before we move on, we're going to kind of wrap up and give everybody an opportunity to give their to give sort of one final set of words of wisdom. But before we move on from that, Thierry, let me ask you: you meet these people all day long, the commercial leaders of our industry. What are some of the traits that stand out? And kind of, if someone was notable, like what are some of the common qualities that those people have?
Yeah, I've been fortunate over the last few years to work with some great commercial leaders. Maybe just to highlight a few things and more on the people side of things. But I think, first of all, commercial leaders that put their people first, ensuring their team is working together on the same objectives, and also across other teams, like, for example, as a sales team, working close with marketing, with revenue teams, and also to see their contribution, to make sure that every individual sees their contribution to the company and team goals. And really, commercial leaders that empower their teams to have responsibility, and also make sure they invest in coaching and development and building a great company culture. And that today is maybe even more challenging than 3 years ago with the full remote, partly remote working environment. So the company culture is so important, and also becomes more difficult because people work from home. You don't see perhaps some of your colleagues for multiple months, or maybe only once a year. So just some of the things. Also, I think important to celebrate some of the small wins, and also, if conditions allow it, try to meet with the team. We are fortunate. I'm flying my team over to Belgium in 2 weeks from now, meeting the entire team for a full week of meetings, also fun activities. So these things I think are all important.
Excellent. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it. Yeah, no question that we've learned how to do this stuff really, really well, and I think there's a lot of information that travels back and forth. I have an opportunity to meet with hotels in the United States, tremendous amount from here, which is just absolutely. I wouldn't have been able to think of that 3 years ago, and it just being so routine and everything. But you also mentioned the point about once in a while being in the same room with people, and I think showing people a little bit that you care. And I think to go back to Ian's point all the way at the very beginning, kind of making sure that we stay connected to that innkeeper kind of a piece. And no question, there's an important part on that. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up with this one. I think this is kind of interesting. We're talking about how people can do better in 2022. And we talked about it really in the context, to a certain extent, from a personal and a career perspective. But there's no doubt that one of the best ways to move your career along is to be successful in your current job. So let's go around the panel one more time. And just get some words of wisdom from each of you. What should people be doing today to ensure that their hotel optimizes revenue and profit at this stage in the recovery? And Stephen, I'm going to start with you. What should we do?
Pour into our people, and we've made that point a bunch. Every panelist, I think, has talked about it to some extent, right? And so, really giving into developing and growing our folks, I think, is going to be super key. We talk about all the data that we're getting and the new tools and the new technology and all the things, but if I give you a jet and never taught you how to fly, then you just have a lot of scrap metal, right? And so that's what we're doing right now. We're throwing all these tools and all this great information in front of people, but we haven't bothered to really give them the time or the effort to develop those tools into something meaningful. And so really trying to figure out how to take that raw talent that Ian was talking about and turning that into something that's meaningful for future leaders. I look at revenue managers as really people that can grow in this industry to take this industry further than it ever has been. I know I'm biased because it's the discipline that I'm in and that I've developed myself in, but I mean, you have dynamic thinkers that are typically when pushed, they're disruptors in the most positive way. They articulate strategy and they bring things to the hotel teams and to the boardrooms that a lot of folks don't really see. And so if we can pour into our people and we can give them the time, the energy that they need to develop those skills, then I think that is really the takeaway from 2022 and what we've learned over the last couple of years, because we can't commoditize talent, right? We can't treat people like a paper towel. We need to treat them as the future of our hotels, of the future of our portfolios, the future of our businesses, and really pour into them. And I think that will set us up to look at 2022 as a pivot point to where we got back to being a service industry and serving our people and having them be, the next generation of leaders that will be on this webcast and other places espousing all the wonderful things that is, revenue management.
So thanks, Stephen. Ian, that to me sounds like development as a retention tool not as a development tool, which is this kind of a concept that you mentioned a second ago. But final words of wisdom, like what can folks do to put themselves on the map?
I'll keep it super concise. I think my conclusion is I'll keep it to 4 Bs. I'll use an academic thing so people can remember it. At the end of the day, it's about believing in recovery and believing in the purpose of what we're doing. If you don't believe in that, you're not in the right industry. You just need to just get that out of the way, right? Love what you do, because at the end of the day, life is really long. And look at Scott and Remy. They're still here and they still love what they're doing. I love you. The second B, of course, is be yourself. Right? This is an industry which allows us to express ourselves. I grew my hair. Can you imagine? This is as long as my hair has been in at least 20 years, but just be yourself. Honestly, it's an amazing industry. Being yourself is a reward unto itself, and people appreciate that. The third B is just build the right skill set. I may be biased. I think revenue management and customer management, all those functions will rule the world. Inevitable, period. And the last B is just be close to the customer and to the operation, right? There is no such thing as too much proximity. The more time you can spend on the front line, the better. That's all I got to say.
I love that one too, man. Yeah, really good, right? I love that. I started writing and then I thought it would look funny if I wasn't looking at the screen for that long. But I love the last one actually, because I think connecting with the customer becomes more and more difficult the more we throw technology at them. We're kind of signaling to the customer we don't want to talk to them anymore with all this stuff. And so I think you're right. I think we have to, again, keep in touch with that innkeeper piece, which is we do greet people still. And I agree with you, Remy. I think that, online check-in's wonderful. It's especially wonderful with an OTA customer that we don't have their email address yet. But I agree with you. There's still no substitute for saying hello, and that's a big part of our industry. So Remy, let me throw it to you now. Follow that up and give us that word of wisdom to close on.
I know we are short of time. I will not make it too long. I fully agree with Ian and the other points mentioned here. I would recap only one more. Continue to invest in your marketing technology with one objective: know better your customers. Because if you know better your customers, you will reduce your cost of sales, you will increase your loyalty, you will master your customer experience throughout the journey that they are having, and that's a key element. So manage right your data, and that will resolve a lot of issues and enable a way better physical experience of your customer in their destination or in their hotels or in their airlines. That's really my message today.
Totally agree, Remy. And same thing, right? The more we're going to communicate with them electronically, the more we need to know them, right? And I think the more we want to be able to do that in a way that is not, email blast and unfeeling, but quite frankly, we're communicating with them electronically in a personal way. And in order to be able to do that, you got to know them, right? You got to know them better.
Exactly.
So Thierry, I'm going to have you give us the final word, right? The recovery, as we know, is not democratic, right? What I mean by that is the best run hotels recover first. The worst run hotels see the recovery in other people's parking lots before they experience it themselves. So what can a hotel do to be on the front end of the curve?
Yeah, I'll summarize maybe in 3 more things. So first of all, I think this is the time, as we've spoken already about, but this is the time to review your tech stack. Ensure you have the right tools in place to capture market share and focus on profit. I think hotels are in a luxury position to choose from many providers out there. So take your time, review in depth, and choose the solution that are tailored to your property. And to add on that, I think in terms of pricing, it's really important to understand what is your competition doing. And nowadays, there's so much more data, so much more promotions, discounts available, hotels applying length of stay discounts, mobile-only promotions. There are the semi-flex rates. So important to understand, are any hotels in my comp set applying any of the discounts? And even though maybe yourself, you're not doing it, maybe you're not looking at Booking Genius, for example, but at least important to look at what is my competition doing? Are any hotels opting in to get a better understanding of what's happening in the market? And I would say second is aligning the commercial team. I know we discussed it briefly already, bringing sales, revenue, marketing close together. It's a big focus for us as well. Actually, this week we are launching a new feature, a new overview dashboard. More will be shared very soon, but it's really intent as well to bring those different departments together and look at the same KPIs on a daily basis. Cool. And then maybe lastly, to end off with, of course, we have to do more with less. suddenly revenue managers are looking after 10 to 20 properties, where initially they were looking after maybe 1, 2, or 3 hotels. So last week we shared the announcement. We have acquired Clia RevGen, I think very exciting company that we're now working with, part of the OTNZ umbrella. And they do a great job in consolidating data for chains, for management companies, and providing data analytics to the hotel industry. So yeah, those 3 things to end up with from my end. Thank you, Scott.
And thank you, Thierry. Enzo, before we let the panelists go, we did a survey, right? So we got a survey from the industry with those same answers, and let's see what everybody said. So empowering the tech stack, we certainly talked about that. That was the number one. Focused on revenue, from revenue to profit. Clearly, we've been talking about that in the form of distribution costs and some of that. Sales and revenue sales, revenue management, and marketing all aligned. Definitely breaking down the silos, and finally the total revenue approach. So I think it looks like the industry agrees with us, guys. So great job.
Cool. So,
Enzo, I think that's the final word, man. So let's take it away.
Yeah, I mean, it was always insightful, and I was listening your feedback and suggestion. I one day, at some point, with all those live streaming, Scott, I think I'm going to open an hotel. I know everything now. I know everything now. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Remy. Thank you, Stephen and Thierry. So thanks again for your conversation. I see that a lot of people still connected. We can still continue another hour here. So let me open the camera to my colleagues, Federica, Diego. See Chris. Are you there, Chris? Chris is not there. So anyway, all right. So at this point, I say thank you, Stephen. Thank you again, Thierry, Jan, and Remy. And I'll see you soon open in a future and another episode of the Revenue Manager. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Actually, thank you, panelists. Great job.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now it's going to be only us, guys. So, and I don't see Harry. It's run away. Right. So before we leave, Scott, we have, of course, this is the second episode. All right. So, and we know that we have a longer season here until December. We are going to run one episode every month. Should we share something about the next episode, Federica, Chris? Go ahead.
Yeah. Next episode will be on 5th of May. So in two weeks, very short, and we will talk about advanced revenue management to upselling. So that will be very exciting and very, very important. I think Chris would like to add something about that.
Yeah, with all these changes that happened and different demand patterns, customer expectations and needs, what can hotels do to go beyond the revenue they maybe have traditionally achieved for their property? So that's why we said, okay, how can we exceed these 100% of what we've done in the past? How can we go beyond? And the technology has evolved in the last couple of years on the RMS side, on the BII side, in automation, and upselling is one of the, interestingly, revenue, or the only revenue stream that remained stable throughout the entire pandemic. So we said, okay, let's build an episode around that and see what can hoteliers do to take it really to the next level.
Cool. Hi, Jill.
Hi.
So it was interesting also today, right? The conversation went great.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, there was a lot of interaction on LinkedIn as well. So it might be good for the panelists to have a look back there as well.
Cool. And right, so again, is there a way we can share the link of the next episode in the comment space of the live streaming we did today? So
I can share it in on LinkedIn. That's not a problem. I will do that.
Yeah. Within the comments, so anyone who was interacting with that will get the notification. I'm sure this is going to be Another great episode, right, Diego? Are you in Ibiza today, in Caribbean, Jamaica? Where are you sitting, man?
Yeah, I'm in Ibiza and I'm on holiday, so I'm on vacation right now. So I'm trying to enjoy my Ibiza right now.
That's the proof of what Jan said, right? Jan Di Tullio earlier said. So if you want to be in this industry, you gotta love it. Otherwise, get away. And I can see you are in the holiday still working, man. So
Always, you know me, always.
No break.
All right.
No
So
break at all.
at this point, I will thank you again, guys. So I'll see you the 5th of May for the next episode. And have a great evening. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you
good
for being
evening.
with us.
Thank you
Bye.
very
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.